Hello students, today's class we will discuss about the introduction of chapter 8 in your textbook, how do organisms reproduce. Page number 127 and 128 are not given in a clear way. So when the introduction comes, you can better understand with our today's class. We have seen the definition of reproduction. Reproduction is the process by which organisms make their own copies or offsprings. But what are the significance of reproduction other than increasing the number? That we have to see. There are two significances. Number one, they can stabilize the species number in the population by reproduction. When the number of offsprings are increasing, that is always stabilize the population stabilize the species in the population. Second significance is that it can cause variation. The changes which are occurring in the population will give them better adapted to the environment. So there are two major significances. Number one, enhances the stability of species in the population. Then the second significance is that providing variation for the better chance of survival by good adaptive characters. Now let us see what exactly happens at the time of reproduction. Other than increasing the number, what all inner changes are happening, especially in the cell. So for that, we will just go for some of the introductory points. You can see here, all organisms are made up of cells that we have already learned in our lower class. All the organisms are made up of cells. I have drawn a collection of cells. When we analyze the cells, you can see that inside the cell there is a vital area. You call it as the controlling nucleus. So cells possess nucleus. And you can see inside the nucleus, when we go in depth, we will see there are many chromosomes. In human cell, we have learned that there are 46 chromosomes. So we can see chromosomes here. Now what are the inner content of the chromosome? We can see that chromosomes carries the genetic material DNA. We have all studied in our lower class, the nucleus possesses chromosomes which carries numerous thread-like structures we call as genes or genetic materials, and technically speaking these genetic materials are nothing but DNA. Now DNA is the solid genetic material which can be responsible for the transfer of characters from one generation to the successive generation. Now let us see what really this DNA does for a cell. You can see that here the genetic informations are coded in the form of a message. After all, DNA is a biomolecule. It is a chemical molecule which has got so many minute parts. These parts are technically holding many messages. And what are those messages in fact? These messages will be responsible for our physical characters, physical appearance. You call it as body designs with several body characters. Now there is a question, how come DNA regulate these body characters in an organism? Now see this, DNA will be passing its messages to a messenger. This is also again another nucleic acid. This nucleic acid is RNA. You call this RNA as messenger RNA. because they are carrying the real message what is present in the DNA. So this messenger RNA is acting like an intermediate. This intermediate messenger RNA will come to the ribosome, the cell organelle, for the very popular manufacture. That is what we call protein synthesis. So functional protein is synthesized 24/7 in the ribosome as per the need. So this functional proteins are the real molecule which is making our design, our body characters. So this is what our DNA does for a cell. So once again, DNA holding the characters, the messages of various characters will be passed on to messenger RNA. This messenger RNA will direct the synthesis of proteins in the ribosome, and in the all these proteins will organize together and finally make our body appearance or body designs. Now let us see what this DNA do for this characters, for making these characters. Children, you can see a cell over here. Alright, now you will concentrate on this side of my board. So you can see a cell over here. Cell is possessing DNA. You can see inside the nucleus a thread-like DNA is present. This DNA for the first phase will undergo multiplication, means copying. We call it as DNA copying as per your NCERT textbook. The first step in this multiplication is what DNA is getting copied. This is also what happens at the time of reproduction. One DNA, the parent DNA, is getting copied into two daughter DNAs. This copying happens at the time of cell division, or what we are discussing, the reproduction time. This copied DNA now will be holding the same characters, the responsibility of the same characters. When these DNA are produced in two numbers, slowly the cell get divided into two daughter cells. This is what happens here also. So two daughter cells are formed with one very significant character, that the same DNA will be occupied by these two daughter cells. So in a summary, we can say that first phase is the division, the copying of the DNA into two copies, identical copies, and these two identical copies will be going to the two different cells. As a result, daughter cells with the same character is produced. If the daughter cells with the same character is produced, means the organism also is coming as the same characters. So when these copying happens, you technically call it as DNA replication. Replication means replica, the same copy. So technically speaking, this is what we call DNA copying. Now let us see how much accurate is this DNA copying. Children, we cannot have any assurance that exact 100% copying is happening. Slight change can happen when the parent DNA makes its own copy. Slight change can happen. Okay. So this slight change may cause another impact, another feature. What is that feature called? This is variation. Variant means slight change. Variation. So the process of formation of DNA with slight change is what we call variation. If DNA is forming with the variation, automatically what can happen? It can reflect in the daughter organisms also. So that is the reason why you are not an exact copy of your dad or your mom. You are showing slight variation. That is why your external features are not exactly same as that of your siblings. External features, not exactly like that of your dad's or mom's the external characters. So now when we have analyzed, these variations are very essential. Why very essential? Because of this variation, we are finding with the body character slightly different. With this different character, we can have the characters which can easily adapt with the change in the environment. You can see that adaptations for better survival in the changed environment. If the environment is adverse, that will be significant for the possessor. That means the organism which shows the variation will be 100% fit for the survival. So always remember, variation can cause an adaptive character for the better survival of the adverse conditions. Is it clear? When these adverse conditions are prevailing, those organisms which possess variation can go for a better adaptation and they can survive successfully. In your NCERT textbook, few points are given. You can see in page number 127, the last two paragraphs are important. In those paragraphs, you can see that chromosomes in the nucleus of a cell contains the information. So from that you can see the same DNA copying, and you can see in the last paragraph the basic event in the reproduction as the creation of the DNA copy. You can see new DNA copies are the basic events in the process of reproduction. And you can even see that in page number 128, the variation in the second chapter, you can see variation and how this variation is important. Towards the end of that paragraph, you can see that some variations were present in few individuals in the population will have better chance of survival. In the textbook, in the same para, children, you can see that one example they have given. The example is bacteria. I'll explain how these bacteria are better adapted. When you see some bacteria grows in the temperate regions are having more moderate climatic condition. Suppose these bacteria were surviving in the temperate region successfully. They were undergoing multiplication. A new bacterial colony was formed. All on a sudden, they face global warming. Global warming means the change in the climate. The temperature is getting higher. So when global warming pose a threat to these bacteria, those bacterial colonies or daughter bacteria were having more variation, could adapt to the hot condition. Those variant were able to adapt to the hot climatic condition where only could survive. The rest were deleted or disappeared from the environment. That means the variation will always offer a better chance for their survival. So from this introductory part, you could see that how DNA is helping in the reproductive purpose. We have seen all the points step by step. You can all see over here how that organism is made up of the DNA, how DNA is helping for the characters and how DNA copying is resulting in the variation, and how variation is an advantage of this kind of survival of the fittest environment. Thank you.